Apple CEO Tim Cook speaking out at Harlow College in the UK last week, warning about the overuse of technology and social media, saying, quote, "I don't have a kid, but I have a nephew that I put some boundaries on. There are some things I won't allow. I don't want them on a social network," end quote. Additionally, 2 years after launching the iPad, when asked if his kids love the device, former Apple CEO Steve Jobs said, quote, "Actually, we don't allow the iPad in the home. We think it's too dangerous for them." In effect, NYU professor Adam Alter documents that in his book Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. And the professor joins us now, along with Ed Lee from Recode once again. Welcome to you both. So, Ed, let me just start with you on the Apple piece of this, because is it hypocritical? Is he drawing too fine a distinction between social media and the iPhone? If he has a point, does he need to do something more about it? And is this the whole point of the Jhana effort?
And there was a study from a few weeks ago about how iPhones themselves or smartphones themselves are very addictive. I think to put a fine point on it, though, he's, I think, more specifically referring to kids of a certain age, right? I think his nephew is around 10 or 11 or something like that. I think that's a perfectly fair and valid point at which to say, I have a 13-year-old. She didn't really get into social media until about 11 or 12, and now I can't pull her away from it. But I think that's a fair thing to put on. At the same time, yes, it's like Apple doesn't own social media, or at least doesn't outright, and so I think it's easier. It's easier for him to sort of make that sort of make that sort of draw that line at least.
Professor, what do you think? Having done quite a lot of work on this for the book.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Children especially don't have the resources, the capacity to control themselves in the same way that adults do. Having said that, adults spend 4 hours a day on screens, and that's growing every year. That's grown from 3 hours 2 years ago. So I think it's a concern for adults as well, but especially for children who need to be guided by adults.
It's funny, I feel like the roadmap for the industry has been laid out there by the alcohol industry, which has always been able to sort of say...
It's not a good sign.
No, it's not, except they've always said underage drinking. They draw a hard line. They
got to label it, right, yes.
And even though they realize people do below the legal age, they do sample and they do experiment, they can kind of benefit from that without actually promoting it.
But how could we ever go down that path for technology and for social media? And should we be specific about social media, or is this about iPhone usage that leads to that? Or
well, I mean, and the other thing, again, to look at the technology specifically, I mean, iMessage is a huge part of the Apple ecosystem, and that, you could argue, is social media. As I said, my daughter spends as much time on that as she does her Instagram or her Snapchat. So, it's as much a part and parcel that I don't think Tim Cook would disagree with. I don't think he would say that, oh, that's not what we do. I think he's thinking you need to put some limits on it at a certain age.
Is it fine, and we've talked about this quite a lot, is it fine to leave it up to parents to say, if you want to keep this away from your kids, keep it away from your kids? Or are we headed someplace that sort of Michael suggests, which is effectively regulation? I don't know what
I don't even know if we're going to have a legal age, but I just think you can kind of play it both ways.
Yeah, I think we're headed down the path towards regulation. I think when people at these large companies come out and say, our key objective is not consumer well-being, it's to ensure that you spend as many minutes as possible every day with our devices, that's a concern, and they're succeeding at that. There are thousands of people against each individual consumer who's trying to regulate his or her behavior. To me, that's a mismatch, and so I think regulation is something that people will consider.
Still, it's one thing if it's alcohol, if it's firearms, if it's tobacco. It's another thing if you're talking about candy and sodas and social, and I don't know where exactly this is going to fall. But thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. No, quick, what were you going to say?
Well, it could be argued either way as well. I mean, I think, that's the tide is turning against tech, right? It's seen as a danger in a lot of ways, and I think if tech doesn't figure it out, they will be regulated. I think that's where the stakes are coming.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.